What's going on, guys, and welcome on into the video. So today we are talking about how we can track exactly what stocks members of Congress are buying, members of our US government. We're going to go through exactly how we can do this, why we want to do this, and then of course how we can actually track exactly how much money these people of our government are putting into these stocks, because they're not going to tell us as of right now how much they're putting in, but they give us a range, and then there's a way for us to go back through history and figure it out. Then at the end, I also want to talk about the potential solution to the problem that we currently have. And that problem really is that people are kind of up in arms, and they're really not a huge fan of members of our government being able to trade individual stocks, right? Because there may be things that they know about the inner workings of the government and potential bills, laws, and whatnot that may have a higher probability of being passed or not. And we don't necessarily have an inside ear to some of those things, or what's coming, this and that. And so the policies that are put in place could really shape, a lot of sectors and how stocks can perform based on a lot of other factors. So that's kind of the big, question. That's kind of like the big worry of everyone's like, oh my gosh, why? And they shouldn't be allowed to do this. So let's talk about what has happened because of those concerns. So this has already been a thing. So since 2012, Congress actually passed the Stock Act, and the Stock Act actually requires those those in Congress to actually report the buys and sells within 45 days. Okay, so they have to do that. And this comes down to when they do individual purchases of like individual stocks or options or bonds or futures or whatever they want to do. Now, the problem is that it is 45 days from when they do it. So they have time. And the other problem is that if we actually look down to some of the violations of the Stock Act, well, some people may get away with it. And then if you don't, sometimes the fines are only just $200. And so that's kind of not a big deal if you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars invested, and if you don't file on time, you take a $200 fine. Who cares? I just made $1 million. You know what I mean? So this is one of those things that's getting a lot more press, a lot more coverage as of late, and people are digging into this and going like, wait a second, there needs to be some sort of changes or some sort of change made here. So first off, why would we want to potentially know exactly, right, what stocks Congress members are buying? Well, it could instill some confidence, right? If they're buying, that might mean that they don't see too much downside risk here, or they see this as a great growth player. They see this as a stock that could certainly increase in its value over the coming days, weeks, months, and years. And obviously the term insider trading gets tossed around all the time. Do we really know for sure if they're trading on insider knowledge? Not really, but they do have more understanding of what potentially is coming down the pipe than maybe you and me, or that maybe that you and me are able to kind of figure out or stay up to date with when it comes to the news. But they also have killer track records, so that's what I want to talk about. I want to pull up Unusual Whales. Now, Unusual Whales right here on Twitter is a great follow if you guys are interested. This is by no means sponsored or anything like that. I just think it's really cool information. So they actually pulled this up, and they talk about those of Congress who beat the S&P in 2021. And take a look at this list. There's a lot of people on this list that beat the S&P, and many blew it away in terms of market returns, which is pretty wild. And it's not Democrats, it's not Republicans, it is a wide range. It's everybody mixed. Although the top 5 on this list are actually Republicans in terms of Congress members who are outperforming SPY by the widest margins. So now let's dive into where we go to find these reports, because they do need to follow these reports within 45 days, or at least they should be. So first off, I'm going to go to clerk.house.gov, okay? Once we are on this website right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the Disclosures tab up in the top right. I am then going to go over to Financial Disclosure Reports. Once on that page, I'm going to go down to Search Reports on the left-hand side. And now what I can do is I can go and search up members. So let's say I wanted to go back to this list on Unusual Whales, and I saw that Austin Scott killed it last year. Now, does that mean he's going to kill it this year? I don't know. But let's say that Austin Scott is who I'm interested in. Okay, let's just go look up Scott. I look up Scott, and just like that, boom, we have Austin Scott right here. And now we can kind of sort this by year. So let's go to 2022 and see if we got anything here. So we do. We do have Austin Scott here, and we have the report. So let's dive into this report. So there's a couple of things we have to understand too right here. Okay, transaction type. This right here, this S means sale, okay? We need to understand that. And if it says P, that means purchase. So on this report, we are just talking about sales. And in this case, they give you a rough amount. And then if there were capital gains over $200, that were accrued through this sale, right? So this is what's actually really, really cool. And the ST stands for stock. So if you actually went down to the bottom of the page, I believe right here, they give you a complete list of abbreviations. So you can kind of go over to this and you can kind of see what this means, what those abbreviations means. If there is an SP, that stands for spouse, which means his or her spouse would have actually made this transaction. We'll go over an example of that as well. So just like that, we can see that he's sold Pfizer, Sherwin-Williams stock, and they have the ticker symbols also in parentheses as well, but not too much. So at least I don't know how much he was buying. If you want to go back way through his history and check out all of his reports, you can probably go find all his buys. But now you can see he's selling some, and you can see the exact date as to when this happened, and you can go back to the price point on that date and get a rough idea of what price he sold, or if you were buying, he bought for. So in this case, we have a lot of information just like that, JP Morgan Chase, but a lot of selling here so far. This is actually just at the end of 2021, okay? Filed in 2022. Going back to another example from earlier in the year 2021 right here for Austin Scott, see how it says owner SP? This actually is his spouse. So you can actually see down here, it is, I believe, his wife's retirement account. So you can see that she, essentially was purchasing Johnson & Johnson in the retirement account, sold FCEL and sold Plug Power, and that actually occurred earlier in 2021. Look at that, back all the way back at the beginning of the year, back when those stocks were probably at their peaks, or at least very, very close to them. And so you can see that on the sales, we have capital gains over $200. Yes, those were checked. On the purchase, obviously, when you're buying, there's no capital gains to pay because you didn't realize any gains. So she bought some Johnson & Johnson, sold Plug, and FCEL. But that's how you get to this page, and that's how you can calculate all this different stuff. So again, all we'd have to do is go back to this date. So let's go look at Johnson & Johnson and find out exactly the price point, or the rough range of price point. So you want to go back to January 26, 2021 and look up J&J. So here I am on Weeble's platform. You can get some free stocks, link in the pinned comment and description box down below. Here's Johnson & Johnson. Let's go back to 2021, early 2021. Let's find the 26th. Wow, this is actually insane. Look at this. Here's the 25th. Here is the 26th. The 26th was a relative high, hit 173.65, guys. And if you go back in time, this stock has gone through quite the range. It's actually below that level as we speak right now. But it was a buy and potentially a longer term hold unless it was sold. I'm not sure if it was. We have to go back through the filings and reports and find that. But you can see that on this date, Johnson & Johnson had a range from about 169.50 up to 173.65. So that was bought roughly within about a $4 to $5 range, and that's where that average would be. Now we go back to the reports right here. In this situation, we don't have any more information on, let's say, how many shares or contracts. We just know the amount was between 15,000 and 50,000. If it could be an options trade or in some of the descriptions down below, you will see they'll tell you how many shares or how many option contracts. And so you can work your way back through the option price, the stock price, those options, and say, okay, they were trading roughly in this range on that day. And you could work your way into finding out exactly what the amount was, or at least get that narrowed in a little bit closer. And that's something that we did a couple weeks back in the Nancy Pelosi video with her husband's purchases. One thing I also want to touch on is that if you're looking at this and you see, in the money options, or you're looking at options, for example, let's just say that in this case, Austin Scott or his spouse or whatever, in this case, bought in the money options on Johnson & Johnson out to 2023 or 2024. Let's just say that they did that, right? If they did, let's talk about the purpose as to why. If you were going to buy, let's say the stock is at 173 when they bought, they may be looking at, let's say, a $150 strike price or $140 strike price. If you're buying an option that is in the money to that degree, you may think to yourself, well, what's the point? Well, the point of doing that is to essentially to give yourself some more leverage, and that's really all you're doing. You're just essentially using a little more leverage so that if the stock does kind of casually grind up 10%, 20% over the course of that year, you're probably going to make, 20, 30, 40, 50% depending upon the option contracts and how big of a move. And so that's all you're doing. You're just trying to leverage your capital to make a little bit more if you do believe in this stock moving higher over that time span. So this is great. We can keep up and see how this stuff works and really kind of follow along. Let's talk about kind of how this can be improved. I think one of the things that can be done if Congress members, really stand firm on being able to trade individual stocks. I know a lot of people are not huge fans, but there could be a better way to report and a bigger fine for not reporting on time. So I do think that 45-day window is too long. I think it needs to be within a couple weeks max. Ideally, the shorter the time span, the better in terms of filing these reports. If we were able to get it down to like a week time span or even same day reporting, that would be incredible. Ideally, that's a perfect world. The next thing could be also get these amounts exact. Give us the exact price point that you bought. Give us the exact price point you sold. Tell us how many shares. Tell us how many contracts. Give us the exact amount. Don't give us a range. And if that is done, there would be absolute transparency here. People would know exactly when people are buying, when they're selling, what price point, and how much money they're putting on the line. And if people knew that, I think there'd be a lot less issue with members of Congress, members of our government being able to trade individual securities, individual stocks. That's my 2 cents. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, we have links to those free stocks with Webull, a technical analysis course if interested, but make sure you're subscribed here. All we ask is a thumbs up on the video if you got something out of it. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you guys can go out and do this yourself if you want to follow some certain members of Congress. If you guys want to just get a sense, let's say every couple of weeks, just see if you can kind of sort through and see what members of Congress are doing. It could be a great resource for you, potentially to give you some ideas for future stocks or to back your way into some investments of your own. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.